Hello, and welcome to Children's Sunday School for May the 23rd with Second Presbyterian Church. My name is Elizabeth Link, and this is Eleanor. Can you say hi, Eleanor?
Hi.
Today's story is about being left out. If you've ever been the last one chosen for a team on the playground, then you know how it feels to be left out. It helps when someone else stems up for you. Listen for some people who are left out and for who stands up for them in this story. Some of the new believers who joined the disciples on Pentecost came from Greece. They spoke only Greek. Some were from Galilee and Palestine. They spoke only Aramaic. Now they were living together. They wanted to get along, but they didn't speak the same language. As the days went by, a problem turned up. The people who gave out the food were leaving out the widows who spoke Greek. You remember that it was important that each person had enough food. This upset the people who spoke Greek. When the 12 disciples heard about this, they told everyone, whether they spoke Greek or Aramaic, to come to a meeting. "We're so busy," the disciples said. "We need to pray and tell people about Jesus. We don't have time to make sure everyone is getting enough food." Here's an idea. Choose 7 people. Choose the people you all like. Choose people who are smart and who love God. They will be in charge of giving out the food. What a good idea. Everyone thought about who 7 people should be. Each one was liked by everyone. Each one was smart and loved God. And each one spoke Greek. These people were going to make sure that everyone had enough food and that no one was left out. The disciples prayed for the 7 people they had chosen. They put their hands on the shoulders of the 7 people and blessed them. The disciple wanted these new leaders to know that they had important work to do. More and more people believed in Jesus too. Even some Jewish priests believed in Jesus. When was the last time you heard someone complain? What did they complain about? And did you listen to them? Who was left out? When you are with your friends, look around and find ways to make sure everyone feels included. Reach out to a friend who is feeling left out. Ask him or her what you can do to help them feel better. What can you do to help someone feel better? Give them a lovey. That's a nice idea. What else can we do to help someone feel better?
Get Band-Aids if you fall now. Or bye-bye.
All right, can you say bye-bye?
Bye-bye. Bye.
Our Bible story for today, in the New Testament book of Acts, speaks of how the early church called out leaders from among its people. These leaders were called to not only govern and help make decisions, but to serve. In our church tradition, in the Presbyterian Church, we are led by such leaders from among the congregation. Members of our church nominate people to serve as elders for a specific period of time. In our church, it's usually 3 years. And these elders of all ages are called to use their wisdom, their guidance, and their faithful living to help serve the church and to help guide the decisions that move us forward as God's people. I took some time this month to interview some of the elders in our church to tell us a bit more about what servant leadership means to them. I invite you to watch their interviews now and to listen for something that you might learn or some new way that God might be calling you to be a servant leader.
Welcome. I'm excited to have Ken Lyons here with me today. He is an elder in our church, and I'm going to let him share with you a little bit about himself and about the ways that he serves Second Presbyterian. Ken?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, my name is Ken Lyons, and I have 2 kids, Madeline and Foster, and a wife, Shelley. I serve in several different roles in the church. Currently, serving as an elder. I am one of our confirmation teachers and looking forward to getting back to teaching confirmation. I'm the current chair of the nominating committee, which selects our upcoming leadership in the church, and work also with stewardship and a couple other committees as needed.
Great. Well, can you tell us a little bit, Ken, about what does servant leadership mean to you?
Well, my day job is working for the Boy Scouts, and so serving others has been woven into not only my career, but as a youth, I was in the Boy Scouts and Eagle Scout, and so serving others has always been a part of what I've done, and I enjoy doing that. What servant leadership means to me in the church is saying yes when you get the call from one of our ministers or from the nominating committee, and agreeing to do whatever you're being asked to do. Know that there was a committee of people behind that decision to ask you, and they feel confident in your abilities to do that. And so saying yes when the church calls is my idea of servant leadership, and being there. As a part of the Boy Scouts, I recruit leaders every day, and so I know how difficult that can be. So being available and making yourself available when that challenge is presented to you is pretty important.
That's great. Thank you, Ken. I think that answer ties in well with a quote I've heard before. Like, your calling is where your gifts meet the world's needs. So we think that God's Spirit works in community. And so when like a committee of people at the church have tried to discern who the next right leader for a certain job might be, we trust that God is speaking through that community, and that you must have gifts, in that way, if you're the one who comes to mind to lead in a certain way. And if your gifts can meet the church's need, then yes is the right answer.
Yes is always the right answer.
I'm delighted to have with me here John Johnson, who's an elder in our church. I'm going to let John introduce himself a bit more to you, and we'll talk with him about what it means to be a servant leader.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. I have been a member of Second Presbyterian for a long time. Actually, I even went to preschool there. And that was way back in the mid to late 1960s, if you can do that math. My wife and I joined Second Presbyterian in the early 1990s when we moved back to this area. And both of my children, Thomas and Ann, grew up in the church. So I consider Second Presbyterian my home church. I have been a Sunday school teacher. I have been a youth leader, youth advisor. I have been a pancake maker. And now I'm on the session. This is actually my second time on the session.
That's great. Well, can you tell us a little bit about what you have enjoyed in your service?
In my service, I think you need to go back a little bit further with me. The Bible is full of stories about leaders, and there's stories about Jesus and how he led people, and how he led people by helping people along the way. And if you believe it, he even washed his friends' feet. But I learned about church leaders in a different way. I grew up in a different church, but in many ways it was a lot like our church. And my family enjoyed going to church and to picnics and weekend retreats and Sunday school and youth group and all the things we do here. And there were always people I came to know who were doing the chores at the church. And they were the ones who taught my Sunday school classes. They were the ones who sang in the choir. They're the ones that helped the minister in the Sunday services. They're the ones who cooked the food for meals in the fellowship hall, and then they had to clean up all that stuff. Or they cooked on weekend retreats, or they drove a bus, or they paid the bills and prepared the budgets and repaired things. And then I learned that these people were the leaders in my church. And we looked up to them because we valued what they had to say and how they thought. And we respected them because they made things happen in our church. And so I've always thought that a church is so much more than just a big building we go to. And Second Presbyterian is your church. It's Pastor Elizabeth's church, and it's my church. And so I want it to work well, and that's where I try to help where I can. Not to lead, but to help. Because I like it here, and I want it to be a place where families can come together and learn about God and enjoy being together.
That's great. Thank you, John. That's a good reminder that there are lots of little things that need to happen in order to make a place like a church run, in order to be able to have these fun events and opportunities to learn, and even for others to be able to serve. It takes folks who are able to flip pancakes and clean the kitchen and drive the bus and get the oil changed in the bus. Those things matter.
Oh, they really do. There's so many moving parts behind the scenes that we don't really think about on Sunday morning when we're sitting in our pew, or when we get to go back and sit in our pew, that make it all work.
That's right. It takes a lot of people with many different gifts. Well, I wonder if you have any ideas for ways that young people in our church, particularly the children in our church, might be able to serve.
So how do children become servant leaders? You probably can't drive a bus yet. And I don't know how well they can cook. But like you said, there's so many ways. There's so many different ways to serve the church. There was a man named Paul who was an important leader in our early church. And Paul wrote a lot of letters to his friends and other churches. And, it was kind of like an email or a text message before email or text messaging was out there. So one of his friends was named Timothy. And he was much younger than Paul. And so Paul had some specific words on this. And Paul told him, and I'm going to try to quote it, but I won't do it right. But Paul said, "Don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example." So I think that young people in our church can be servant leaders in the church, first by looking around and see what needs to be done. Can you help someone find their way in the church halls? Can you help each other clean up in Sunday school? Or clear the dishes in the fellowship hall? Maybe you can help with games at the church picnic that's coming up in a few weeks. Maybe you can just be a friend to someone who is new to our church. Any of those things would be serving and leading all at the same time.
Those are great. Well, thank you, John. I know this conversation and the other conversations we're having will help us think about what it means to serve and to lead, and also maybe spark some new ideas, for things that we all can do to be a part of this church family and help where we can.
I think that would be great.
Thank you. I have with me here today Cindy Waters. She is a member of Second Presbyterian Church and an elder in our church. I'm going to let Cindy introduce herself a bit more.
Hi, good morning. I hope everybody is doing well. As Pastor Elizabeth has said, my name is Cindy Waters. I have been a member at Second Presbyterian Church since I was an infant. So I was born into the church. My mother was a church member there as well, and so was my grandmother. So I am 3 generations in as a member at Second Presbyterian Church, and I absolutely love our church, and I hope you guys do as well. I also have 3 children, Trevor, Carson, and Garrett Waters, who have grown up in the church just like you guys are all doing as well. So I guess I bring to our church a 4th generation of members.
Absolutely, you do. Well, could you tell us a little bit, Cindy, about the ways you are a servant leader and how long you've been serving as a servant leader at Second?
Sure. So I was asked to become a servant leader probably about 2.5 years ago. So I've been serving as an elder of in the session for 2.5 years. And of course, just other ways of serving the church. There's obviously many ways you can serve the church. And I enjoy teaching Sunday school. and volunteering in other ways as well. But as for servant leader, as an elder, I've been on for now 2.5 years.
That's great. Thank you, Cindy. So could you tell us a little bit about how did you know that you were called? How did you feel called to say yes to serving in this way?
So interestingly, I was actually asked several years beforehand to be a leader in that way in our church, and the timing just did not feel right. So sometimes, you have that sort of weird feeling inside of you where something just doesn't feel like the timing is quite right. And at that time, it wasn't quite right. And as I mentioned before, I have 3 children, had a lot going on, and I didn't feel that I felt like I'd be pulled in too many different directions. So fortunately, I was asked again, and I say fortunately because it has been an amazing experience. I was asked again 2.5 years ago, and it just, the conversation that I had with Dr. Anderson at the time, it felt right. And it felt like my timing was right in my own faith journey. So, I think Jesus definitely opens up our hearts at the right time, and he knows our struggles and is there to guide us when things are going to be right in our own lives. So that would be it. Like, that would be the calling, and it felt good. It felt right.
That's great. Well, thank you, Cindy. I definitely think that the God's call works through community, but also it has to work with your timing in life. And that's a good illustration of how sometimes the answer might be not yet. It's not a no, but just not yet. And
right.
You waited till the time was right, and we're so glad that you did. So thank you for all you do for our church.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure.
You, Cindy. Now we have Beth Smith with us. She's an elder in our church. I'm excited to have Beth and let her introduce herself to you today.
Hi, I am Beth Smith, and I actually grew up for a little while at Second Presbyterian and was baptized in the church and moved away for a while and came back to Second probably about 17 years ago. I'm married to Jeff, who works with the youth group a lot, and I have 4 children. I have Olivia, who just graduated from college, Caroline, who is a rising junior at JMU, and Philip, who will be a senior next year at Hidden Valley, and Henry, who will be a 9th grader at Hidden Valley. And I am currently an elder on session, and I am chair of the Service and Outreach Committee. And we work with our mission partners and local agencies to support them as they help those who are most in need in our community.
That's great. So Beth, I want you to tell us a little bit about the kind of things you do as an elder. So you chair that committee, but what are some other roles, and what are some things maybe you've done for the church in the past?
Yeah, well, I've been involved in the church. A lot of what I've done in the church in the past has been related to children and youth activities. I've volunteered with Bible school. I've been a shepherd in the river. And I've also worked on making meals and coordinating meals for children's choir and the youth group. With being on session, I'm kind of expanding out a little bit, and we help with ushering every week with the church, and I also help with making decisions for the church as far as, especially during this time period, should we be open with church, and kind of what's safe for us to do during this pandemic, and then work with the people in the community, reaching out to them to see how they're helping those in the community, and deciding how Second Presbyterian should support those agencies.
That's great. I think that's one of the good things that has come about in terms of communication during this pandemic. Like Beth and her committee call organizations like the Presbyterian Community Center and Ram House, Roanoke Area Ministries, and places like that to find out what their needs are and ways that we, Second Presbyterian, might respond and serve them. Now, Beth, I wonder if you could tell the children in our church maybe some ideas or ways that they might be servant leaders too.
Yeah, I think there are different ways that young people can be involved. One easy way, as I mentioned, ushering, they can help out with ushering as maybe their parents were volunteering with that, or to help out with the 2 cents a meal collection at the end of every month. Another easy way, I think, would be to maybe write a card or draw a picture for some of our members who are homebound, or that might be sick, just to let them know that their church family is thinking about them. Another thing I think would be just by being involved in the church, either by being in the children's choir or coming to Sunday school, being involved with youth choir. I think that helps build community within the church and create relationships where you can help support your friends within the church who might need it as they're going through life. And along the same vein, I'd say just by maybe inviting your friends who are in church or your neighborhood, that helps spread God's word and would get them maybe involved in Second Presbyterian and being part of our community.
That's great advice. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Beth. We appreciate your words and all that you do for the church. Thank
Sure.
you.
Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Smith with our song for our final Sunday school at Second Presbyterian Church. It's number 547 in the Glory to God hymnal, Go My Children with My Blessing. Go my children with my blessing, never alone. Waking, sleeping, I am with you. You are my own. In my love's baptismal river, I have made you mine forever. Go my children with my blessing. You are my own. Here are the notes. Go my children with my blessing. Never alone. Waking, sleeping, I am with you. You are my own. In my love's baptismal river, I have made you mine forever. Go, my children,